Considered at one point the fastest man alive, Jesse Owens' greatest accomplishment would go beyond his 4 gold medals he won in the 1936 Summer Olympics. In a time of segregation and Jim Crow, he stood tall and proved that he was every bit as good and even better than his white counterparts in the presence of Adolf Hitler, the face of eugenics and white supremacy. But when he returned home to the United States, he was quickly reminded that he was a black man, and the fight for equality wasn't over yet. Hey everyone, welcome to Hobby Teaching, a podcast by teachers. My name is Matt, and I'm a teacher. There are so many cool things to talk about in history, and unfortunately, there's not always enough time in the curriculum or in the school year to talk about all of them. So I started this podcast, and I'll be talking about all the interesting and oftentimes overlooked people and moments in history that aren't always covered in the classroom. Let's begin. Born James Cleveland Owens in Oakville, Alabama on September 12, 1913. He was the youngest of 10 siblings. He had 3 sisters and 7 brothers. He was the grandson of a former slave, and his father, Henry Cleveland Owens, was a sharecropper. Sharecropping is an economic system which trapped former slaves into a cycle of perpetual debt by allowing slaves to work the land of a former plantation. The plantation owner traps the slaves onto the land and essentially forces them into a cycle of debt. The rent is always going to be too high for the land. The rent will always be too high, or the cost for seeds will always be too high. So it forces Black Americans into this cycle of poverty that they can't ever get out of. It's a form of slavery after slavery was supposed to be outlawed. So in 1922, at 9 years old, the Owens family will move north to Cleveland, Ohio, looking for better economic opportunities. At this time, James Cleveland Owens, going by JC, will be incorrectly identified as Jesse Owens. He comes to the north with a very heavy southern accent. And so when he introduces himself to his new teacher, she mishears him, and she believes he says his name is Jesse instead of JC. And from this point forward, he goes by Jesse. Jesse Owens will become his name. Now, even though the North is going to offer more legal freedoms for Black Americans, it is not going to offer the economic relief that the Owens family needs. So Jesse and his brothers are going to work a lot of odd jobs. They're going to work in the steel mills. Jesse's going to run groceries, loading freight trucks, or fixing shoes. They're all working hard from sun up to sundown to make ends meet for the family. They wake up, they go to school, and then after school, they have to work these jobs for the family. Around the time in junior high, Jesse's going to get recognized for his athletic talents in his gym class. His coach, Charles Riley, is going to see how fast Jesse is, going to see how much fun he has showing off his athletic skills in class. And he recruits him to the track team. Now, Jesse can't compete because after school he needs to work the jobs for his family. And so Charles Riley agrees to meet Jesse in the morning and to train him before school even starts. He prepares Jesse for the mental toughness that he's going to need when he competes as a sprinter. He teaches him to run on the track as if it's on fire. Instead of running in a lumbering motion, he teaches Jesse to run in more of like a fluid, upright motion. And he trains him through junior high, through high school, and helps mold him into this athlete that he's going to become. Jesse's going to keep up with him for his entire life. He's going to affectionately call Charles Riley Pops. He's almost a second father to him. He'll even be there later on in Jesse's life when he competes in the Olympics. So in high school, Jesse becomes nationally known. It's kind of rare to see a young kid in high school competing with what we call senior level athletes, the athletes who compete professionally. But Jesse does. He is able to put up times and distances just the same as the grown people who are competing at a professional level. By the end of Jesse's high school career, he is going to tie the existing world record for the 100-yard sprint at 9.4 seconds, and that record is going to be held for over 43 years. He is going to set the new interscholastic record for the 220-yard sprint of 20.7 seconds, and he's going to set the new interscholastic record for long jump of 24 feet 9 5/8 inches. So he sets these two brand new records at the high school level, and then he ties an existing world record that's going to last for over 43 years after he ties it. And so obviously, Jesse is a well sought after person at the college level. He's going to be recruited all across the nation, and ultimately, he is going to choose to go to Ohio State University. That's really close to his home, so he can still be by his father. He can still be by Coach Charles Riley. So he chooses Ohio State as his next place, and he chooses very well. When he arrives, he is going to be nicknamed the Buckeye Bullet. He will win 8 individual NCAA championships between the year 1935 and 1936. Even though Jesse is a highly recruited athlete, even though he's a well-respected member of the Buckeye track team, he's still not going to be treated as an equal. At this point, America is still at the height of the Jim Crow laws that we see, still at the height of segregation and separate but equal. So Jesse is not treated as an equal at this point. He can't live on Ohio State's campus, so he cannot stay in the dorms like his white teammates. He can't stay in the same hotels when they go on the road. He can't eat at the same restaurants, so he's forced to go to black-only restaurants where he's forced to do takeout. He isn't even allowed to have a scholarship because of the color of his skin. He is forced to work a part-time job after school, after all of his classes at Ohio State, after practice. He is forced to go and work a part-time job because he's not allowed to have a scholarship as a black man. So even though he's a well-respected person, even though he is the greatest athlete on campus and probably in the United States, he's still not afforded the basic rights that all of his white friends, teammates, athletes also receive. On March 25th, 1935, Owens is going to complete what we call the greatest 45 minutes in sports history. He is going to set 3 world records and tie a 4th world record in just 45 minutes of the day at the Big Ten Championships in Ann Arbor. First, he'll tie the world record for the 100-yard dash at 9.4 seconds. Then he's going to set the world record for long jump at 26 feet, 8 1/4 inch. He's going to set the world record for the 220-yard sprint at 20.3 seconds. And then lastly, he's going to set the world record for the 220-yard low hurdles at 22.6 seconds. And that last one, the low hurdles, not only does he break the record, he is the first person in history to be underneath 23 seconds in that race. And that competition right there is going to be enough to get him on the 1936 Summer Olympic team. Berlin will be awarded the 1936 Summer Olympics in 1931. At that point, Germany is still ruled by the Weimar Republic. In early 1933, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party will take power. And at that point, there's a lot of talks about what the Summer Olympics should do. A lot of people believe that the games should be moved to Rome. There are obvious concerns about the Nazi ideology, about white supremacy and anti-Semitism. The Nazi Party is already passing legislation that will only permit Aryan athletes to compete. That's a problem. And a lot of the athletes, a lot of the world leaders do not want to compete in these games. They are talking about boycotting, or they're talking about moving the location to Rome. So the International Olympic Committee goes to Germany and asks for some sort of assurance that the Jewish people will be allowed to compete. And Germany gives it to them. Adolf Hitler says, yes, absolutely. The German Olympic Committee gives them a written assurance. Yes, Jews will be allowed to compete. They even go so far as to place 20 Jewish athletes into their Olympic training sites. So they're allowing them to even try out for the Olympic teams. And that seems to be enough for the International Olympic Committee to decline changing locations. At this point, I'm sure some of it was politics, and I bet another part of it is in 1933. The games are 3 years away at this point, and changing the Olympic site would have been disastrous for the games. Rome probably wouldn't have been ready to host the games in 1936. So that's probably why the International Olympic Committee declined to change sites. Still, that doesn't stop the talk of boycotts. Athletes everywhere want to boycott the Olympic Games. The Olympics are not meant to be political. They're not meant to be for the politics to take the world stage. It's supposed to be a break from all of that. But if people are visiting Berlin, whether they're athletes or visitors, they're all going to be subjected to Nazi law, ideology, and propaganda. And a lot of athletes don't want to be subjected to that. And so the United States American Olympic Committee president, Avery Brundage, forms a committee and sends them to inspect Germany. They check the conditions of the athletes, they check the conditions of the Jewish athletes, and they come back and they report that nobody's being mistreated. The Jewish athletes are doing fine, so there's going to be no U.S. boycott. Everything's golden. I think we need to point out at this time that Avery Brundage really wanted America to continue to compete. It was important for him that Americans competed. He will go as far as to say any athlete that is even thinking about boycotting, talking about boycotting, they are, quote, un-American. And so that puts a lot of pressure on athletes to make that decision that they should probably compete. Well, Jesse Owens at this time is aligned with the NAACP. He agrees that they probably shouldn't compete in Berlin. He is quoted as saying, quote, "If there is a discrimination against minorities in Germany, then we should withdraw," end quote. So at this point, he is with other black athletes in believing that he and everyone else should not compete in the Berlin Games. And that is because we need to remember that Nazi Germany and the Nuremberg laws isn't just discrimination against Jewish people. The Nuremberg laws, it also includes black people. Over 500 black people living in Germany will be sterilized. Black culture such as jazz is going to be censored. And the Nazi stance is that the Aryan race was greater than all ever. They believed in eugenics, the belief that there is a science that proves that white people are better than all other races. And so the Nuremberg laws is not just about the Jewish population, it's also about the black population. And so it's understandable that a lot of the black athletes would not want to go and compete at these games. But as the games approach and get closer, Jesse's viewpoint of the game starts to change. Ultimately, he decides that he is going to compete. He believes that the greatest form of protest in Nazi Germany would not be to not show up, but to show up and to beat every white athlete in the races. Because if he shows up and he beats all of them, he proves that eugenics is false. He proves that the Aryan race is not better just because of the color of one's skin. He proves that black athletes can be just as good, if not better, than white athletes. So he does choose to compete in the games. The United States will end up sending 18 black athletes to the games. And when the black athletes show up, they are shocked because they're allowed to stay in the same dorms as white athletes. They can use the same facilities as the white athletes. They're allowed to eat at the same restaurants as white athletes. They're not encountering the same racism that they're used to in the United States. There are even reports that say that the black athletes are being cheered for the same as the white athletes by the fans in the stands. There are reports that as Jesse Owens is winning his gold medals, the fans are chanting his name. And what's even cooler is Adi Dassler, the creator of the Adidas shoes, convinces Jesse to wear his Adidas shoes in his races. Jesse becomes the first black athlete to receive a sponsorship. He didn't receive any of that when he was in the United States. But now that he's in Germany, he is receiving sponsorships. People want him to wear their shoes in his races. So the 1936 Olympics takes off. The 1936 Olympics is most notably, aside from Jesse Owens that is, famous because this is going to be the first Olympic Games that's going to be televised. It also is the first time that basketball, canoeing, and field handball will be included in the games. Germany will win the medal count with 101 total medals earned, 38 gold, 31 silver, and 32 bronze. And the United States will be second with 57 total medals, 24 gold, 21 silver, and 12 bronze. Jesse is going to win the most individual medals with 4 gold medals. One in the 110 meter dash, another one in the 200 meter sprint, another one in long jump, and his last one in the 4x100 meter relay race. These Olympic Games are also marred with 2 different controversies that we will see involving Jesse Owens. On the first day of competition, August 1st, Hitler will congratulate all German gold medal winners and choose not to congratulate anybody else. The International Olympic Committee chair president tells Hitler he either needs to congratulate all medal winners or he cannot congratulate anyone. So Hitler chooses not to congratulate anyone. On the second day of competition, Jesse Owens will win his first gold medal. And Hitler does not congratulate Jesse Owens. In fact, it's even reported that before the race is even over, Hitler gets up and he leaves the building. The media is going to run with the story. They're going to report that Jesse Owens was snubbed by Adolf Hitler and that he was being mistreated by the German people. Now, the actual truth behind this that Jesse Owens himself will actually clear up later on is that Owens is actually escorted towards Hitler's box in the stands. And as he walks by, Jesse gives kind of a bow and a wave to Adolf Hitler, and Hitler smiles and gives him a salute. No words were exchanged. They didn't shake hands. There was no congratulations, but they did at least kind of acknowledge each other. The German media, on the other hand, treats Jesse Owens severely and unfavorably in all accounts. They report that Black Americans are not true Americans, and therefore the United States is cheating by allowing them to compete. Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi Germany's propaganda chief, is going to write in his diary, quote, "White mankind should be ashamed of themselves." And so, obviously, they're being treated rather unfavorably in the media, especially because Jesse Owens and the other black athletes are proving the eugenics theory to be completely false. The second controversy we have involves the gold medal race for the 4x100 meter relay race. Owens and Ralph Metcalfe, another black athlete, are going to be asked to replace 2 of their Jewish teammates, Marty Glickman and Sam Stoller. The official reason for why this substitution is taking place is that Coach Dean Cromwell wanted to ensure a gold medal win. And so he decides to substitute in 2 of the fastest people in the world. Jesse Owens is the fastest man on earth at this point. However, the United States was already heavily favored to win. They would probably have won this race anyways. Jesse Owens even protests this. He tells Coach Metcalfe, "I've already won my 3 medals. I'm tired. Let Marty and Sam race. Go ahead and let them do this." And Jesse is told, quote, "You'll do as you're told." And so he races and they win gold. Later, Marty Glickman is going to state that he believes he was replaced for anti-Semitic pressure from the Nazi Party and that Dean Cromwell caved to the pressure. It is also believed that the U.S. Olympic Committee was receiving pressure from high-ranking Nazi officials. They were already upset that Black Americans were winning medals, and they didn't want to rub it in that Jewish athletes were also going to win a gold medal. Either way, what happened to Marty Glickman and Sam was wrong, and it was one heck of a spot to put Jesse Owens in. After the Olympics, upon returning home, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States, will invite all gold medal winners to the White House. However, Jesse Owens is not invited, nor are any other of the Black athletes. Jesse Owens doesn't even receive a congratulations from FDR. The greatest athlete on the Olympic team this year for the United States, won the most medals out of everybody, is snubbed by the U.S. president. Later on in New York, there is a banquet held for the Olympic athletes at the Waldorf Astoria. Owens, the biggest star at the time, is allowed in this parade, and people are cheering for him. They're excited to see him. They're happy to see him on the streets. But as he arrives at the Waldorf Astoria, he's refused entry. They tell him that he can't enter the front doors the same as his white teammates. Instead, he needs to go to the side through the service door, and then he can take the freight elevator to the reception hall. Many of his white teammates are receiving endorsement deals at this time as well, but Jesse nor any of his Black teammates are receiving anything. Understandably, Jesse Owens is upset, and this is where he clears the air about the snub incident that took place at the Olympic Games. Owens says, quote, "Hitler didn't snub me. It was Roosevelt who snubbed me. The president didn't even send me a telegram," end quote. After the Olympic Games, Owens and the rest of his teammates are offered to continue the tour of races around Europe. But Jesse turns down the opportunities. He's tired. He doesn't want to continue the race. He hasn't seen his family in so long, and he wants to find lucrative money. He and his family are living in poverty at this time still. He is getting money for commercials, for film deals, and he wants to head back to the United States so that he can make money off of his fame. This is going to upset the American Olympic Committee president, Avery Brundage, the same man that called him un-American for wanting to boycott the games. So Avery Brundage chooses to strip Owens of his amateur status. The fastest man in the world, Jesse Owens, can no longer race in any amateur racing events, including the Olympics. What choice did Jesse Owens have? His family was living in poverty. He wasn't making money off of traveling Europe. And there were lucrative deals for him in the United States. He wasn't getting the same endorsement deals his white teammates were getting. He wasn't even allowed in the front door of the Waldorf Astoria. He wasn't even invited to the White House to meet the president for the 4 gold medals that he won. And so Jesse returns home, and he begins to work some odd jobs, just trying to make money. The lucrative film deals and the commercials that he was hoping to get never actually came through. And so instead he races horses, motorbikes, and cars. And when I say races them, I don't mean he rode the horse or drove the car. He sprinted against horses. He sprinted against motorbikes and cars, and people bet on the outcome. And he received money that way. In 1955, he will be appointed as a goodwill ambassador by President Dwight D. Eisenhower. where he will tour the United States as an ambassador for health. He's promoting healthy living and exercise and participation in gym classes. Unfortunately, Jesse Owens was a lifelong smoker. They said he used to smoke almost 5 packs a day. So later in his life, he develops an aggressive form of lung cancer. And on March 31st, 1980, at 66 years old, Jesse Owens passes away. One of the greatest Olympians who ever ran for the United States. When you think of Jesse Owens, you think of the fastest man in pre-World War II America. A man whose athletic prowess led him to greatness on the world's largest stage at the 1936 Olympics. Oftentimes we forget about the convoluted events of history that unraveled around him. He was a man that lived the prime of his life 2 decades before the rise of the civil rights leaders of the 1950s and 60s. Still, he represented the millions of Black Americans who experienced the horrors of racism on a daily basis. On the world stage in 1936, he protested the treatment of Black Americans in one of the ways he knew he could: Black excellence. He won 4 gold medals in a country who unabashedly proclaimed the truth of the pseudoscience of eugenics and white supremacy. He won more gold medals than anyone else at the Berlin Olympic Games, only to return home not as an equal, but as a second-class citizen. A feeling which he shared with Black World War I veterans of the time, and he will share with the future war heroes of World War II and Vietnam, whose lives were equal to whites when they went to war and died, but not when they came home and wanted to drink out of the same water fountain. Jesse Owens is a hero to many for being the fastest man alive, but I hope this lesson also showed the strength and courage of Jesse Owens as a leader in our world. I hope this lesson highlights a moment in history where Americans, rightfully hailed as heroes and the greatest generation for storming the beaches of Normandy just a few short years later, were also the people who snubbed one of the greatest Olympians because of the color of his skin. It shows that history is rarely just a yes or a no, a 1 or a 2. It's complicated. It gets messy, but it is worth knowing. Not so we can judge the people of the past, but so we can learn and be better people, better citizens of the world for our today and also for our right now. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on Jesse Owens. Please join our community here on YouTube and on Instagram. I would also love to hear from you. If you'd like to email me, my email address is hobbyteaching@gmail.com. I believe we're all teachers here. I would love to hear and learn from you too. See you in the next episode.